Welcome to the Board of Advisors podcast. We are here at Q1 of Board of Advisors Summit. I am Leo Climaco, your host of the Out of the System podcast. I'm here today with Josh Kirk. How are you, Josh?
Man, I'm good. Happy to be here. How are you?
Doing great, man. Let me ask you, how long have you been a BA member?
This is my first time.
This is your first time
I think
here.
3 days.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What brought you to BA?
So I saw there was an ad, there was a post, there was something that I came across. I entered some info. I said, let me see what this is about. And I got a call scheduled, and it was about noon. And I think at 12:03, my phone rang, and I saw Corbin's name come up, and I had his contact. And it just so happened, he called, and I said, hey, what's up? And he said, you got a call scheduled. I said, oh, I didn't, And Corbin and I go back a ways. And he said, hey, let's get Mike on the phone. And I talked to Mike for a few minutes, and
Wait, so you knew Corbin already prior to BA?
Yeah, Corbin had introduced me years ago. I met Corbin at an event, and he had introduced me to a couple other people years ago, right? So I'd known him. I met some other people through him. And then Mike got on the phone. We started talking, and he said, you really need to come to this. You need to come see what it's about. I said, all right, I'll come check it out. I drove up from Houston, and here I am.
What are your thoughts?
I think it's pretty impressive. I, in and out of the room, I had to take some calls, but a lot of the synergy, a lot of the people that are here, a lot of what's moving, I think is really substantial. I think that for an individual that's looking to grow their network, if they're good at working a room and actually networking and understanding what that means, this is a place for them.
I agree 100%. I agree. And I love how BA, this is also my first time here. I love how BA wants to know exactly what you do to pair with you with the perfect person.
I find that impressive.
So do I. They go above and beyond.
Yep. I've been parts of other groups. I've paid, $100,000, $250,000, $60,000 to be members in other groups as far back as 2015, 16.
Wow.
And I will say that I haven't seen a networking environment, a group, or a community go to the extent that's been put together here.
Josh, tell me the power of investing in yourself.
It's the knowledge, the growth, and it's the opportunity to be capable of expanding beyond what you can currently do.
That was very well said. I agree 100%. What drives you?
My faith and my family and my story. That's what drives me.
What's your story?
How much time do we have?
About 20 minutes.
All right. So I grew up in a small town, 730 people. I quit school in 10th grade.
730 people.
It was 732 to be exact.
Wow. So everyone knew everyone.
Everybody knew everybody. I quit school in 10th grade. I grew up in a pretty rough environment. My old man shot me twice. I've been run over, been stabbed, I've been beat. Like there was a lot of history there. And it wasn't back then. I didn't realize what we call trauma. Then I was like, well, shit, this is childhood, right? So growing up in 2000, went to work in the oil field, started roughnecking, worked my way up. By 2016, I was running drilling and completions North America for Chevron.
Wow.
2007, I had a severe incident, not myself, but I lost my little brother. I lost one of my best friends. I had a guy get his hand cut off on a rig I was on, and I had a motorcycle wreck all within a few months.
Wow. And
tore my left shoulder off, really messed myself up. So that trauma kind of is, I wouldn't change anything that's happened in my life because I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
But that trauma kind of excelled a little bit of my mindset at the point. Then I worked all over the world: Algeria, Libya, Saudi, Kuwait, offshore, ultra deep water, U.S. land.
Wow. On
the rig side, the completion side. I left the corporate world in 2016, and I had this entrepreneur mindset since 2001. I'd started businesses. I had some friends. We always were trying to do something, throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what stuck.
Right.
In 16, I left. I went consulting, did some consulting work till COVID hit. And at that point, I had already started a solar company And I didn't know, right? I took some of the recipes from other people, but I had never really gone out on my own. I was flipping some ranches. So before Yellowstone was Yellowstone, I'd buy up 300 acres, 600 acres, 1,000 acres, cut it up into 10-acre tracts and sell it, and wrote kind of a little recipe for that with
That's awesome.
Substantial returns. We're talking 5, 6, 700% a year.
Wow.
On your money.
Good for you.
And then from that point, we moved into private equity. I brought in a couple friends. I traveled around. I didn't understand. I had a lawyer. I kind of was learning to build a private equity company. And two of the friends that I brought in to be partners in the company, we traveled around, introduced to the Middle East. I ended up raising in capital commitments $800 million in 9 months. More money than I could deploy. I never thought it would happen. Got back, and one of the lawyers said, you can't take that as a company. Like, you're not registered for this. You're not your company. And I didn't understand. My mind was like, I have a business.
Right.
I really don't know, but I think I know. And he said, you're going to have to turn it down. You're not structured for this setup.
Wow.
So it really dug in like, man, what am I doing? What do I need to understand? I had made some money in the real estate side, in that real estate game. It was a substantial amount of money, mid 8 figures. And about 5 years ago, I encountered my first fraud, right? That was a $4.5 million rug pull in an offshore trading platform. And that sucked. It was about 10% of my holdings at the time. And I thought, man, I'm never sending my money offshore again, right? But at the same time, I was digging in, like, how did it happen? Why did it happen?
Right.
I didn't realize that would be the start of something today that's superior. And so I said, I'm not going to send my money offshore. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to develop some systems. I'm going to understand. I got introduced to a company that was local in Houston. It was an investment boutique. And they checked every box. They had an office, they had insurance, they had licenses, they had resumes, they had everything.
They walked the walk.
Yeah. So over the course of a couple of years, I moved, tens of millions of dollars into this investment boutique. And they ended up being about 2 years into a Ponzi.
Wow.
So, I was out 4.5. I thought I learned my lesson. I was out, just over 30 million.
Wow.
And I dug, like, I just had to understand, and created some reports. I created some forensic reports. I did a lot of intelligence work. I paid people to create reports. My reports came back better than theirs. I paid people to go help recover assets. Those were just, nothing ever happened. It was like people wanted to take money, but services today in this world really suck. Like, it's hard to find good service providers.
I agree.
So, my lawyers during the lawsuit of this company said, well, you can't testify on the stand as an expert. You're not. You're a victim. You've been doing this, but you're not. You have to. There's certain qualifications you have to have to testify as an expert witness. So I got introduced to somebody that was an expert. Right? They gave their forensic opinion, and that company tried to hide it through bankruptcy. That was discharged. We had enough, credibility and evidence through this. And a couple months after that, I was approached by the same consultant, the same person that testified on the stand. I had just went through severe losses and said, "Aaron, we think we know kind of what you wanted. You were looking at investing in. We think it can be done. And, we'll consult. We'll do this." And it sounded great. My trust level was down. So, I paid for equipment for them to do it. They were consulting. And they were going to build out this infrastructure, and then I would be purchasing and have the IP. Like, it was going to be a process. And July of last year, they overrode the security protocols, or what we thought we had security protocols, and stole all the money.
Oh my goodness.
And it was just the lowest blow, and it was what I had left. So you go from having what I thought was wealth and living and a good lifestyle to literally $537 in the bank.
Wow.
And just all losses. I sold off every asset. I did everything I could to survive. And it was to a point where I really wanted to end it all. Like, I was just so lost. I had faith, and then faith was not lost, but it just wasn't my foundation at that point. It was more survivability. And I think that you know, there's this analogy that, you know, when you harden iron, right? When you heat it, hammer it, you cool it, heat it, hammer it, and it gets harder and harder. But if that anvil isn't strong, that faith, that foundation, that'll start breaking. That iron will start breaking. So, and I'm not into building any of that or do that, but that's my understanding. So, you know, it was one of those times where it was just dark and miserable, and I couldn't figure it out. One of my partners and mentors said, "Hey, you know, why don't you look into divine mercy, kind of maybe go to adoration and say some prayers." And it was one of those where, okay, you know, I'm going to go. And he had mentioned it. And so I go to adoration. I'm there for an hour and a half, and I leave. I had been really digging on trying to uncover how this last bit of fraud happened. I had created all the forensic intelligence reports I had done. I mean, I found every source, everything. And I remember I was on a call. We, you know, were introduced to a Secret Service agent. I had been talking to the FBI agent over the case of this fraud. And I remember the FBI agent telling me, your money's gone. But I remember looking at cross-chain analysis that I had done and seeing my money there, but moving slowly. And I'm thinking in my head, how can you tell me without knowing my money's gone?
Right.
And it was frustrating. And you know, with everything in you, you want to argue, you want to say no, and it just doesn't do any good. And then I started looking at statistics, right? And statistically, $5.8 trillion in fraud globally, 1.4 trillion in the US.
Wow.
Just in business due diligence fraud in the US, just in that part of it's $114 billion a year in losses.
That's insane.
So when I looked at that and I looked at the backlog of the feds, when I did everything, I talked to a Secret Service agent. They looked at this case, and it was such a sophisticated case that they were interested in it. You know, so they were going to go assist with the FBI.
They were intrigued.
Yeah, and I thought, all right, you know what? Fraudsters are innovators, and we can't. Every time people lose, it's just another hit. How do we get in front of this? But I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know. Again, 5 years now, I didn't realize what I had been building. So I leave adoration and I'm driving. I go home, we eat, go to bed, wake up. My business partner calls me in another company that got dumped into my lap. So years before that, there's a company that has for 5 years built agentic explainable AI systems for their DoD. Okay. Machine learning systems.
Incredible.
And this engineering team was amazing, but at market, they weren't, right? So they wanted to shift kind of the business model. So I had studied it, and, you know, he calls and says, hey, we have a client that's looking at buying the company. And I said, oh, yeah, we've got 4 of them in line. And you know, we had evaluations done and everything else. And I said, what do you need? And he said, well, we need to do some due diligence on this guy. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure he can buy the company before we waste the time. And I thought, all right, you know, give me a couple hours. And come to find out, it was less than a 1% chance that the guy could buy the company.
Wow.
It was a 7.2% chance that if he had 4 institutional investors, he could buy the company. So at that point, the flags came up and it was like, okay. So I send it to him and he says, why aren't you doing this as a business? I said, honestly, I don't know. I've been lost. You know, this is the day after praying. This is the day after everything. And it kind of solidified like, yeah, why not? I have been. He says, you've done this for 5 years. You've helped people. I've traced hundreds of millions in assets. I've helped recover millions of dollars. And here I am doing all that and struggling to stay afloat after losing everything. And when you're there, like a lot of people want to ride up to the top with you, but when you're down, no. And then it seems that when you're down and there's crickets, that's when people want to attack.
Yeah.
Like they want to come. And there's nothing to attack. Like, let's be real. Everything's gone, but they don't realize that.
Right.
They see this perception of everything. So I said, you know what? I don't know, but let me think about this. And I thought about it. I dug in. I got on the computer and just what my kids call locked in. I locked in. Mm-hmm. And Sentinel Global was born out of this. You know, I talked to a few people and they're like, well, you know, let's see what you can do. I did some case studies. I did some forensics reports. One of them, I remember a guy doing a big event and he calls and says, hey, you know, we're looking at a guy. We've been wining and dining this guy. And one of my business partners wants to invest in him. Show me what you can do. His law firm has looked at him and they're going to wire $3 million this week. I said, yeah, you know what? I'll do it. Like this is it's an easy
right.
thing. Due diligence is our bread and butter. And our compression time We can perform what takes weeks and months, we can do in less than 72 hours. Wow. And it's way more thorough, right? More in depth. Behavioral analysis, temporal analysis, like there's a lot we cover. So I do this report and I find out like this is a catastrophic investment. It was above a 90%, like big red in our report to our client was like, do not invest, right? And it went through everything. We found layers and layers of red flags. We found a lot of issues. And so I send it to him and his lawyers get a hold of it and they're thinking, you know, I get a call and it's like, hey, my lawyers want to talk to you. They've suspected some, but then nobody could put anything together. And they asked about the in-depthness and how we did everything. And I kind of explained a little bit. I didn't give them the infrastructure mode, right? We have a 19-layer infrastructure stack.
That's incredible.
That we use. And so once that happened, it solidified that. I get calls from people that, hey, I've lost $2.1 million to this company. And these are outside of losing. I'm getting calls now of like, hey, you know what? I'm looking at hiring this guy or this. So we are communicating and working with the local sheriff's department. I think we're one of the few companies that's now working with and talking in negotiations with our property crimes division to help recover and trace assets and prevent fraud.
Wow.
And then on the communications, I mean, on the business side, a lot of companies now are seeing that their background checks or the SaaS systems or, you know what, their employment history, that's fine. But as a CTO, a CFO, a CEO, a board member, who are these people? Where's the truth layers, right? Like cut the noise, cut the articles, get rid of all the noise and the bullshit.
All the fluff.
And who is this person? And if they are in charge of 5 million or 20 million, what are their habits? What are their behavioral patterns? What are they most likely to do? And then here's the mitigation techniques to still protect your assets, right? I was showing another person here last night, one of the reports in a sense, and he said, and it hit me. He's in real estate, and he hears all this noise of forensic intelligence, but he didn't understand it. He says, "I see what you do now. You appraise people."
Exactly.
And I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense. So for real estate, I appraise people and assets.
Yes.
To tell you, are they valued, undervalued, overvalued? What's going to go on? Where you're going to lose? And he said, and everybody I talked to said, I wish I would have had this 3 years ago. And I said, well, I wish I would have had it 5 years ago. I would have millions of dollars still in the bank. I would have had, the boats and the private planes and everything else that I had is all gone. There is nothing. Now, being stripped of that, I realized like, I just want to live. I don't need all that. Our life is so short here on earth that having the opportunity to help people, right? Yesterday, somebody asked, well, what's a big deliverable? What's something you want to accomplish? I would like to cut fraud, and this is a small number. I would like to help reduce potential fraud and losses, not go recover, but by 10%. You know what 10% equates to? $580 billion.
Wow.
So just grabbing 10% and helping stop that. Just in the US, it's $115 billion in due diligence fraud. Let me help you with 10% of that.
That's crazy.
That would be the people in this room. That would be the people out there, the people watching would be able to say, you know what? I could spend a small amount of money to know who I'm getting in business with, who I'm investing in, what I'm buying, what are the risk profiles, what are the mitigation risks, right? I mean, everybody that we talk to, law enforcement, legal, attorneys, insurers, when you look at all of our clients, high net worth individuals, family offices, every one of them, they say, we need this. There's always a story. I wish I would have had this.
Yes.
Well, now you do, but are you going to use it now?
Right.
And that's where I'm at today.
That's very, very impressive. Mike was right. You do belong in this room.
Well, thank you.
100% right. Wow, Josh, you've had some really high highs and really low lows.
Yep.
What's life about?
For me, I'm going to go back. I've realized like where my faith is, right? Life's about that. But life is about gratitude, right? So years ago, this is crazy. So my very first set of coaches was Ed Milet and Andy Versello, right? This was the RT Syndicate side.
Yeah.
I remember Ed, I used to message him on Instagram and I said, one day you're going to coach me. And it was a year later, we're sitting at dinner and he's like, I remember when you said that. And he used to, there was always something that stuck with me and I couldn't understand it was things happen for us, not to us. And I always just, that's bullshit. Like things do happen to us. But when you think you hit rock bottom, there's more levels down, right? And it just goes and goes and goes and goes. Why? What is it that's happening for me? And realizing it's the value of the family, the life. It's not like my kids don't care if they fly first class or on a private jet or coach, right? It's the memory of what we're going to do. First class is nice, right? I don't need private. I don't need a $60,000, $80,000 flight, but looking at what people take advantage of, I geek out a little bit. The Earth, right? Our universe has been here just over 13 billion years.
Yep.
The Earth's been here 3.4 billion.
Yep.
Our lifespan on Earth is shorter than how fast you blink your eyes based upon the realm of time. If it's that short, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Why? First of all, why are people just not being authentic and genuine? How come we have to have so much bad shit going on? And how do we get in front of it, right? So the faith, the family, and memories, we're going to die. None of that shit's going to, yesterday I heard somebody say something that, nobody's coming to save. We have a savior when we die. And it's our job to ensure that, but nobody's coming to save us. And it's our responsibility to do the morally right things, the integrity, the right things when nobody's looking, and letting my kids understand that, letting my family understand that. So when I'm gone, they still follow that.
Okay. So that's something to ponder for this year.
Yeah. I
can probably see, just quick thinking, probably, I don't know if you're ready for that, but probably hire a CEO, right? Someone to...
We're a month and a half in business, bro.
That's it?
And I bootstrapped this for
You're a month and a half?
537 hours. We have 8 clients, 6 have paid. I have my first investor came on. I have a $4 million seed round open. My first investor came on. He's the CEO of Entergy out of Texas. I have a chairman. He was the longest standing CEO of a communications company. He's also a mentor. And then I have a CTO, which has helped develop the infrastructure, the moat, the systems that we use to gather the data we have. That's what I have.
You're proof that failure doesn't exist.
You lose when you quit.
Exactly.
Right? That's when you lose.
Exactly.
When you want to stop breathing. There was times, somebody asked me a while back, there was a small speaking engagement down south of Houston I got invited to, and it was about mental health. And the guy, he was asking me, what's something you'll never forget? And I go into the dark side. When I look at a lot of people that I've had as coaches and they talk about the dark side and things like that, there are things you will never forget, right?
Yeah.
But it's when you give up, you lose. And
100%.
Too many people give up. They lose hope, they lose faith, and they give up.
My favorite book is 3 Feet from Gold.
I haven't read that
Napoleon
one
Hill.
I'm gonna have to check that one out.
It's a great book. Josh, I got to cut this. I wish we had more time. I'm really enjoying this conversation with you. You're an incredible person. Where can people find you?
Josh W. Kirk on Instagram, sentinelglobal.ai, Josh at Sentinel Global, Facebook. I'm all over the place. If they search Josh W. Kirk, they'll see me.
Incredible. Josh, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Board of Advisors podcast. Please like, subscribe, comment, and remember, when you're in the room, anything's possible.